Today, this is Bloomberg Intelligence Radio. We're broadcasting to you live from our Interactive Broker Studio right here in Midtown Manhattan. We cover everything that you need to know, business, economics, finance, and politics through our lens of our Bloomberg Intelligence folks. They cover 2,000 companies and 130 industries worldwide. Next up is Nathan Dean. Honestly, there's no one better. He is Senior Policy Analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence, and he joins us now from Washington, D.C. What have you learned over this last week about policy from Harris or Trump, and how are you factoring that in?
So I think we're still in the stage of the campaigns where they're putting out a lot of statements, but when you look at the process of how they would implement those statements, take into point President Trump's 60% tariffs on goods from China or Vice President Harris's anti-price gouging proposals, it's important to remember how Washington works. So in President Trump's case, when he says, I want to put a 60% tariff on all goods from China, the power of the presidency is a lot more powerful, and he can do that and bypass a lot of the opposition to that tariff. But on the flip side, when it comes to Vice President Harris and her price gouging proposals, that's something that you would have to go through Congress, and legislation is not easy to come by. And a lot of the price gouging statutes are at the state level and already somewhat exist. So we actually think it's much less of a risk for that type of policy. So again, we're in the campaign season. Everything has to be taken into account. How are they going to get their plan through in the new year? Is it either Congress, regulations, or executive order?
So when we think about policy, I know Vice President Kamala Harris has really been proposing some ways to juice the residential real estate market, and I focus on real estate stocks, so of course this is really of interest to me. But I mean, when we think about all the things that she is promising in her plan, which a lot of people have said does lack explicit details, do you think that this is something that could actually be implemented into policy, or does it seem to be more of a talking point?
So I think I would call it a phase two policy. And what I mean by that is, to your point, there's not a lot of detail out there. And housing policy itself is very difficult at the presidential level because, look, if you want to have more homes, but then on the flip side, people don't want the value of their homes, the already existing homes, to go down. And so many times we don't see presidential candidates really get into housing policy all that much. So in Vice President Harris's case, if she were to win, I think what would happen is that she would begin to formulate a housing policy in 2025 and save it for like a phase two section. Maybe there's something that she can do with the FHFA. Maybe there's something she could do via the regulatory route to try and increase the number of homes that are out there, cut some of the regulatory red tape and such. But I don't think you're going to see an immediate reaction to the housing stocks or to real estate stocks, for example, if Kamala Harris were to win, because to your point, there's just a lot of details out there we just don't know.
So based on your point of how you get things done, executive order, regulation, or through Congress, I want to hit on regulation for a moment because we've seen a very active DOJ and a very active FTC. What's your best guess in a Harris or Trump presidency on how that evolves?
So I think in a Harris policy, you're going to see more DOJ and more FTC in terms of enforcement risk. And the reason being here is that the Supreme Court has taken certain steps over the last couple of months to sort of take away some of the rulemaking ability of the regulators. It's much more difficult to create a regulation. So as such, if I'm Vice President Harris and I want to change behavior, I'm going to increase my examination, increase my enforcement side, and enforce the rules that we already have in place. So someone over at the FTC, if Lena Khan is still there next year, she certainly is going to continue that tough scrutiny of certain sectors like the technology side. If President Trump wins, then you have a certain change of mindset at the top, and you have a deregulatory effort beginning to take place. And maybe the enforcement side remains just as tough in certain sectors. Think of, if J.D. Vance's economic populism gets into the White House. But I think overall, the risk of an enforcement risk would decrease in a Trump presidency.
I just have some breaking news that I want to bring to everyone. Israel carries out a series of strikes on some Beirut suburbs. This is the state-run agency NNA is reporting this from Lebanon, that there have been blasts in Beirut. Israel says it targeted Hezbollah's headquarters in southern Beirut, and this is from an IDF spokesperson commenting on that. So it is official that Israel said it has hit Hezbollah's main headquarters in southern Beirut as the violence there continues to unfold. Okay, Nathan Dean, back to some of the politics and the elections, etc. In terms of executive orders, are they effective in terms of policy, and are they immediate?
So I would say about 85% in my estimation of executive orders are just fancy ways of the president to pick up the phone and direct his or her staff to do something either the legislative route or the regulatory route. But like I said before, the power of the presidency is more powerful when it comes to tariffs, national security, foreign relations, and trade. So if you're looking at the President Trump scenario of tariffs, and look, tariffs are going to be popular with President Harris, Vice President Harris as well if she were to win. So if you're looking at tariffs, the teeth of those executive orders is certainly there as a risk or as an opportunity. But I would state is that tariffs should be seen as a tool for presidents to negotiate. So if it does happen, you'll probably see an executive order come out saying that I'm going to put a tariff in place in 270 days, or unless this country doesn't do anything else. It's a negotiation tool. But also just remember that there are, reciprocal arrangements. Other countries are allowed to put tariffs on our goods. And so we're going to be looking at, if a tariff does come into place, is it almost seen as like a double whammy for U.S. exporters? If you're using foreign stuff to come into the United States, you have to pay for that tariff. And if you're trying to sell it outside of the United States, it could be a double whammy. So the tariff argument is, headline risk initially. We have to see the specifics of it. And then ultimately, we'll then just be able to talk about the impacts and how much of it is really going to cost the American consumer.
Hey, Nathan, super quickly with about a minute, I wanted to ask you, of course, a lot of voters are really thinking about the economy right now, and that's really been a campaign point for both candidates. How does that actually look in terms of how it would materialize if either of them were to go into office, considering the Federal Reserve is the one that actually takes care of monetary policy?
It's something that it's a great question because, there's this conception out there that the president has the ability to direct the economy. And as our rate strategists and our equity strategists tell me all the time, that the Fed is almost, if not more important, or is important, if not more. And so I think it's going to be about messaging, because if it's Vice President Harris or President Trump, whoever comes in next year, they're going to have to take steps to actual steps to show the American consumer that they're dealing with inflation and they're dealing with price costs, and then hope that the Fed sort of aligns with it.
Hey, Nathan, we really appreciate Nathan Dean, Bloomberg Intelligence, Senior Policy Analyst, joining us there. We really appreciate that. Just to update you on those headlines.